the only United Nations cemetery in the world. The United States has 36 burials. The U.S. contributed the greatest number of persons to the conflict, 1.7 million, of which 33,739 were battle deaths. Most were reinterred to the United States. This Memorial Day 1954 remembrance on foreign soil touched me deeply. I said, and when two biggies, I get home to Owego, that's what I would like to do, MC a Memorial Day service. Lo and behold, that opportunity came around 1963 or 57 years ago, still checking the early records, when the American Legion's Fred Tiffany said, "Here is the tentative program, improve on it and do it." The rest is history. Oh yes, there was one excused miss. Back in the late 1960s, when I was on the Notre Dame campus in the Basilica of the Sacred Heart for my sister Carol's wedding after graduation from St. Mary's of Notre Dame. Standing under the golden domes, I could hear Grantland Rice saying, "When the one great score," that I used to close my sportscast. Roll call of deceased veterans began decades ago with personal visits to the cemetery and writing down the information from the veterans marker. Later on, the Veterans Agency graciously updated the roll call, names, cemetery, and war for use on Memorial Day and Veterans Day. I have always felt it is very important to remember the service and especially the sacrifice of our veterans. Memorial Day 2020, a day of remembering. For over 2 centuries, brave men and women have laid down their lives in defense of our great nation. These heroes have made the ultimate sacrifice so we may uphold the ideals we all cherish. On this Memorial Day, we honor the generations of Americans who have fought and died to defend our freedom. We honor the heroes who have laid down their lives in the cause of freedom, resolve that they will forever be remembered by a grateful nation, and pray that our country may always prove worthy of the sacrifices they have made. This 25th day of May is designated for the purpose of strewing with flowers or otherwise decorating the graves of comrades who died in the defense of their country during the late rebellion, when we go back to the Civil War. The real meaning of Memorial Day is to remember. We remember the sacrifices of men and women who died in the service to their nation, the sacrifices of their families who gave something their only child, the sacrifice of entire generations who gave the best, the brightest, and the bravest they had to offer. We remember prisoners of war and those missing in action. You are not forgotten. Please remember to keep the 83,000 missing and unaccounted for servicemen and their families in your thoughts. As this Memorial Day, there are 73,515 missing from World War II, 7,800 from the Korean War, 1,600 from the Vietnam War, 126 from the Cold War, and 6 from post-Vietnam wars and conflicts. Many prisoners of war died in captivity, and many missing who were killed in action, their remains uncovered. You are not forgotten. Vietnam veterans recognized by the Route 38 Memorial Highway of Valor. Their sacrifices are a great example of courage, devotion, and love of country. A special request to families and veterans: report the POW status for recognition. Often we're not aware of a POW status until we read an obituary. Memorial Day remembers fallen heroes. Boy Scout Troop 60 used to read the names of the honored on the Tioga County fallen heroes. This year we're in the studio. Owego Elementary students presented one American flag to honor the memory of a fallen hero for his sacrifice. And we thank Casey Shabbat for organizing the students. The memorial wreaths are on the Tioga County Veterans Memorial, and the Owego Village Police Department has placed the flags on the Susquehanna River Bridge. Normally, the officer of the day would be performing his duty, advance the colors, march the colors to the front. As we honor America, we'll do that with our national anthem. Played by the Owego Free Academy Marching Band under the direction of Lindsey Williams, succeeding the nationally recognized Director of Bands, Dan Fabricius. Reminding you, the band will have a salute to the military a little bit later in this program. Now the invocation. Normally we would have a member of the clergy with us, but today I'm your clergy. A Memorial Day prayer. Heavenly Father, as our nation pauses today to remember those of the military who have given their lives for freedoms we enjoy, we pray you would have us all look to you for strength, comfort, and guidance. Be with all who serve in our armed forces. Bless them and their families. Grant your loving protection. Let peace prevail among the nations. O God, especially let your mercy rest upon our land, even as we acknowledge with thanksgiving your past goodness in this country. If it is your will, preserve the lives of the men and women in uniform as they defend our citizens. Most of all, we pray that you would turn the hearts of all, military and civilian, to your holy word, where we find the true peace for our sinful souls that surpasses all understanding. Keep us repentant of sin, move us to know, take hold and treasure your saving grace. In the name of Jesus, our Savior, and your blessed Son, you alone give this peace and hope for eternity. We pray. Amen. Tioga County is a Purple Heart county. Each fallen hero received a fallen Purple Heart. Living veterans asked to report their Purple Heart. Families are asked to report the Purple Heart received by a deceased veteran. Owego and Tioga County remembers. Small communities like Owego and Tioga County don't forget their veterans. Walk through a cemetery and you witness the endless American flags indicating a veteran's grave. The silence. Names of people who no longer make their mark on the world. Names that are beginning to fade on the gravestones marking their graves. While American flags were set next to each grave on Memorial Day weekend in past years, flowers were laid at a few scattered graves by family and friends this year. On this May 25th, Americans will mark their 154th annual observance of Memorial Day. A proud Army mom and Gold Star mother is with us in the studio, Barbara Bilbrey. Share with us what it's like not to be able to go to St. Patrick's Cemetery for Flags In?
Good morning. Thank you for having me. Every year, Flags In, every year since Charlie died, Flags In was an opportunity for me to tell Charlie's story. My job as his mom now is to make sure that he is not forgotten. What he has done is not forgotten. And every year being able to pass that on to school children, usually sometimes St. Patrick's Youth Group, to be able to tell them Charlie's story so that they bring that on to the next generation. I don't worry that they remember me. All I do is remember as we stand there in the cemetery at Charlie's grave that they remember who he was and what he did. And then that brings that into the next generation, that they will remember that and carry that on. There's going to come a time where Charlie and I are reunited, and I'm actually hanging out at St. Patrick's with him, but he will not be forgotten.
You know, at his funeral at St. Patrick's Church, S.D. Monroe, there was an officer here,
Yes,
the burial officer.
yes.
Who was he?
That was General Robert Caslin, who at the time was the commandant of cadets at West Point, and he retired 2 years ago as the head of West Point.
And he walked from S.D. Monroe
Yes, he did.
up Front Street,
He asked
through
me.
Ross and down Main.
He asked me if he could walk behind me, and I realized that the entire way he was one step behind me. His step, he cadenced his step to my step at all times.
Normally, on a Memorial Day weekend, you have to scoot back to Owego.
Yes. Come in flying by the seat of my pants on Monday morning. This year was difficult. Since 2013, my husband and I have been going down to Washington, D.C. for Memorial Day weekend, arriving on a Thursday and scooting out Sunday afternoon. Legion Post 177 in Fairfax, Virginia, kind of adopts me as a Gold Star mom, and we participate in different ceremonies, wreath-laying ceremonies at Arlington, and then Sunday morning, they find me a motorcycle ride, and I participated in Rolling Thunder through the streets of Washington, D.C. Every Memorial Day up until this year. I found myself very, very empty over the last few days, not being able to be in Washington, not being able to be with other Gold Star families, other Legion members. It's an experience.
You also earlier go down to Savannah, Georgia.
We go down to Savannah on July 26th, which is the day Charlie died, and we visit Fort Stewart, Georgia, which is where he was stationed right before he deployed. And in the coming months, kind of the decision taken out of our hands, my husband was given a job offer in the Savannah, Georgia area. And we are looking at houses right now in Hinesville, Georgia, which will put us about 5 minutes outside the front gate of Fort Stewart, where it all began. So not everything is a coincidence. God kind of rolls you the way he wants you to be. So after 30 years of being in Owego and raising my family here, we will be moving to Hinesville. It's very, very emotional. This town has raised my family with me. They cried with me. They have stood behind us for the last 13 years.
You know, you had about, 25 years as obstetrical nurse at Lourdes Hospital.
29 at Lourdes.
29.
Yep. And now coming up on 3 at Tioga County Public Health Department.
And you got an email from JR that said, what about Flags In? What about Memorial Day Parade?
It was giving consultations, and of course, I have no authority to say what to do and what not to do. That authority comes from Marty and Sheriff Howard, and I know there was a lot involved in having to make the decisions that we did. Not me, not we, wasn't me. I realized that every group, when the decision was made between the VFWs and the Legions and all to put everything aside this year, that was hard. That was hard. And to be perfectly honest, people ask me, your son sacrificed for this country. Well, right now, we've asked everybody for the last 2.5, 3 months to sacrifice for this country, and largely they have. People have given up their graduations, their weddings, school days, school friends, businesses, jobs. We've asked people to sacrifice that for the better of this country, and by and large, for the last few months, people have.
We know that some people snuck into cemeteries and placed flags. And I know that I looked the other way, and I know that we will consult with the health department and other officials as to when flags then can take place.
Right. Leanne Tinney is working. She has the business, the business are going to her following the phase-ins that the governor has asked us to follow to phase back to normal.
And the other thing I think that's important is the military cemeteries in Europe are all closed.
Yes.
And our good friend Oren Floor of Helmond, Netherlands, was unable to go down to visit 2 cemeteries and visit the graves of 6 Tioga County World War II veterans.
Yes.
So you know what he did yesterday?
What?
He picked up the telephone and called me from the Netherlands. And I said, I don't know how to do it. It was on Messenger. And I missed the call.
You pushed the button.
Well, I had to look at the instructions, and it said, turn the microphone on. So we did that, and I saw the picture, and there was Oren Floor, regretting that he couldn't go to the cemetery, and it's the first time in X number of years that he wasn't able to go.
Yeah, and Arlington right now is closed to the public. Families, friends of mine who have their children buried at Arlington were able to go to visit their children's graves, but it is closed to the public right now still.
And our good friends Pat Byrne in England normally goes on this day to a hilltop about 1,600 foot up to put 9 American flags at the site of an airplane crash in World War II. Mm-hmm. And they're restricted to home by the coronavirus as well as older age.
Yes.
So, other thoughts on Memorial Day, Barb?
Growing up, my father was a Korean War vet, and Memorial Day in our house was it was a solemn day. It was not a, Saturday and Sunday may have been, barbecues and family together, but Memorial Day itself, Dad took pains to make sure that we, who was a generation raised largely in peacetime. I was a small child during the end of Vietnam, but we were raised largely in peacetime. And he went to great pains to make sure we understood what the generations before us gave us. Because Korea, World War II were before my time. And having grown up in peace, that comes out of your mind. It's not in the forefront of your mind.
Are we doing a good job in educating today's generation?
We're trying. I think we're trying. I think social media gives us a platform to use to be able to remind them what has come before them, to remind them that the sacrifices that provide them with the ability to express the freedoms that they want to express, that came at a price, and using their own platforms to get that message to them.
An example was Bill Kennedy, the last Pearl Harbor survivor. He insisted on going to Pearl Harbor Day down at the VFW. And his health was broken, and I asked him, I said, would you like to talk to an Owego Free Academy assembly? He said, yeah. So the assembly was the social studies students. There was only supposed to be about 20 kids there. Mm-hmm. He got there, welcomed by the staff, All of a sudden, you look down in the auditorium, and the seats began to be filled, more than 20, like a couple of hundred. They had living history from
Yeah.
the last time. That was his last public appearance.
He was a great man. He was wonderful to speak to. And again, he took that thought that it's his job to carry forward so that people have that firsthand memory in their mind of what he was telling them.
And he always, well, at the park or down at the VFW for the December 7th ceremony, he was in a wheelchair,
Yes.
but he always got up for the national anthem.
You know, that's a very, very powerful image to see that. I have it in my mind of him barely able to get up out of a wheelchair, but by damn it, he did.
And that's what we're here to teach. The veterans are here to teach the younger people.
I may or may not have straightened a few people out during national anthem times at different sporting events that if I saw something during the national anthem, I may or may not, I won't directly admit to having gone over and straightened it out a few
At
times.
sporting events, you have a dual role. You're a mother, and also you're a referee.
Yes. I actually retired from refereeing at the end of this fall. I called my last game at the beginning of November,
After how many years?
21.
I think pretty soon we're going to have a parade go by.
I think that's a phenomenal idea. I know it kind of came together at the last minute, but I think everybody in Owego, I think people need that. I think people need to be in an appropriate manner together.
Show that plaque right there, if you would, Barb.
This is my son Charlie with his combat action badge, his Bronze Star, his Purple Heart, and his Iraqi campaign medal. This was given to us by his unit after he died.
Well, John Loftus always starts a parade on time, and there they are, the Owego Police Department, the VFW going by. Dave, are you going up to the window a little bit closer?
Is
There's
there a camera there?
Yeah, we have
Sheriff's
a camera
Department.
shot from the window.
I think they're seeing
Oh,
it.
cool. Look at all
Isn't that amazing? I can't see. From here.
that. Do you want to come over this side and see?
No, go ahead. Why don't you describe it, Barb? You can see it.
Yeah, but I'm not the master of words that you are.
No, go ahead.
So what we have is a procession of vehicles from the Owego Police Department to the VFW van to the Village of Owego. Mayor Mike Barada driving by now, and Don Castellucci from Owego Town Supervisor. We've got just some different vehicles with veterans in it, kind of some personal vehicles and a military vehicle, just privately owned vehicles, veterans, and a trike going by, a motorized one, not the kid kind. That's an important distinction. You've got a minivan going by, and they're coming from the Owego Central Fire Station on North Avenue. Lots of flags going down North Ave, and they're going to turn onto Main Street, go around to Courthouse Square, come back up North Ave. And just a small kind of
Owego
private
Fire.
showing, a Owego fire truck. To kind
You know,
of
well, Joe wasn't there last year when the parade took place. The fireman's statue.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That was still being refurbished. So this was a sort of a last-minute thing. I'm calling it more of a procession than a parade because we can't really have parades with the social distancing guidelines, but
But
you can still drive up the street.
yes, you can. We can't stop. Nobody can stop you from doing that. And I'm impressed. Owego always comes through. Always.
So we still have some vehicles from the Owego Fire Department going by, as you can hear. It's the Owego ladder truck, driven by Assistant Chief Jim Morris. And personally owned pickup truck with a couple of American flags in the bed. Another engine from Owego, a rescue truck. They're emptying the fire station this morning for a drive around the block.
Pat Gavin is watching down on South Carolina. He was one of the ones instrumental in getting this together with his family, wife's family.
I believe with that OPD car that brings up the rear of the parade. So we're back to regular traffic here this morning and back into the studio. But a quick 4-minute procession worth of vehicles past the radio station this morning on North Avenue in Owego as we.
Well, the key thing is there was a procession.
Yes, the Memorial Day broadcast here. So social distancing has sort of brought us indoors this year. I mean, normally we would be in the Tioga County Courthouse Square, in the lawn, at the monuments, and all standing side by side, shoulder to shoulder, in a large gathering. So without large gatherings today, we put together a procession instead of a parade.
That's impressive. Even it is. It just is.
It's something. Owego always comes up with something. You know?
Always. We're going to remember fallen heroes now. Memorial Day is a time for remembering. We remember not to glorify war. We remember from respect. On this Memorial Day weekend, we await the flags and permission to go to the cemeteries, but personal visits are acceptable. We remember Staff Sergeant Mario Panetti, killed on Christmas Day, 1943, when his B-17 on a weather flight crashed in the Dorchester National Park in England. He's my neighbor. Air Force veteran Laverne Millard was killed on a B-29 in South Pacific. Vietnam Navy veteran Henry J. Van Wagner Jr. buried at sea. Killed in action in World War II, Marine PFC Donald Short of Tioga Center, killed February the 7th, 1944, in the Marshall Islands of the Pacific Ocean. Richard Romine, killed in action in Europe on the 12th of May, 1945, now buried in Tioga Cemetery. Claude Johnson, killed in action at Saint Michel, France. Marine Bill Thompson of Katyville, killed in action on bloody Iwo Jima. Air Force Staff Sergeant Roland Dietrich, killed with his crew aboard a crippled plane in Italy. Navy Lieutenant Commander John Rybold, killed in action in May 1942, in command of the destroyer Dickinson when an enemy shell hit the bridge of his ship. Aviation radioman Second Class Francis Leo McTammany Jr., killed in the Battle of the Coral Sea on April the 30th, 1945. He's one of 38,000 buried in the Punch Bowl. McTammany is buried near the grave of journalist Ernie Pyle, who was killed by a Japanese sniper during the Okinawa campaign. Seaman First Class Delmer Dale Sibley, entombed on the battleship USS Arizona with 1,100 Navy personnel since Sunday morning, December the 7th. Let us interrupt for the procession. I guess it just went
It's sort
by.
of just happening in the background.
They're rolling back the
if
other
you
way.
don't mind the ambient noise, you get an idea of what's going on behind us here.
Army Private Hiram Saddlemeyer, killed February the 24th, 1945 in Belgium, buried in Hope Cemetery, Newark Valley. Army Private First Class Glenn A. Warner, killed in action on February 23rd, 1945 in Aachen, Germany, buried in the Netherlands American Cemetery and Memorial at Margaten, Holland. Owego's VFW post honors his memory. His Gold Star mother, Nina Warner, died in 1984 and is buried in Evergreen. Staff Sergeant Chauncey Moreland, killed in Percy, France, on August the 4th, 1944. One of the first Japanese prisoners of war, Rear Admiral Robert Bassett, buried in Arlington National Cemetery with 175,000 other veterans. Bassett was in a Japanese POW camp for the duration of World War II. The USS Pope sank in the sea battle of the coast off Java in February 1942. Remembering World War I veterans from the Last Man's Club, World War I veteran Harold Monell, Carl Tracy, and Burton Wilcox. Standing at the Tioga County Veterans Memorial in Courthouse Square recalled memories of our Memorial Day Parade Marshal and VFW Color Guard leader, Dr. Harold Phelps. Past Owego VFW Post Commander and Korea veteran Harry Holland of Nichols and George Camp of Owego. Vietnam veteran Navy Lieutenant Commander G. Wynn Montgomery. Navy veteran Stanley Wooslagel, who escaped the Japanese in the Philippines. Anzio beachhead veteran Jack Thomas and his brothers Frank, Fred, and Phil Thomas. North Africa tank veteran Foggy Ferguson. World War II Army veteran and 17-year United States Congressman Howard Robinson, buried in historic Evergreen. The next to the last founding father of Owego's VFW post, World War II Chief Petty Officer Smiles Morse, buried in the Navy in the uniform he loved. The last founding member of the VFW, 75-year-old Gordon Judge, died in May 1994. Army PFC Marion Albert Lisk was killed in action May the 17th, 1945 in Okinawa. Army Staff Sergeant Robert Relier killed in action on May 21st, 1944 in Gottridge, Italy, and PFC Alan Redding Catlin was killed in action in Germany on May 10th, 1945. Both are buried in Tioga Cemetery. Army Sergeant Richard Millage, who died on October the 3rd, 1944, of shrapnel wounds received in action in the Palau Island in the South Pacific. Walking through St. Patrick's Cemetery a couple of years ago, American flags decorated the graves of 5 fathers and sons from different wars. World War I Army father Sam Jerome and his World War II Navy sons John and Gabe Jerome, World War II Army father J. Edward McHugh, and Vietnam son Edward McHugh, World War I Army father Paul McCormick, and World War II Navy son Paul McCormick Jr., World War II father Francis Ward, and Vietnam Navyman son Joseph Ward, and World War I father Wright Johnson and peacetime son Thomas Johnson. At the grave of Shangri-La WAC Corporal Margaret Hastings Atkinson, memories of her rescue by glider after 47 days lost in the New Guinea jungle after a plane crash. Army Chaplain Father Eddie Joe Waters of Owego celebrated masses on a troop ship in the English Channel for GIs before they hit the beaches of Normandy on June the 6th, 1944. Chaplain Eddie Joe administered to the combat infantrymen on the beaches. And in Evergreen Cemetery, we pause to honor the father-son gravesite for Vietnam veteran Douglas Grant III and his World War II Navy aircraft carrier pilot Doug Grant Jr. This June 25th marks the anniversary of the Korean War in 1950. Korea cost Marine PFC Raymond Short his life at 20 on November the 7th, 1950, while guarding a troop train. He was the first Owego serviceman to die in Korea. Shrapnel blinded my neighbor, Robert Babcock, in Korea. And on Memorial Day 1954, I remember standing in the 36-acre United Nations Memorial Cemetery outside Busan, Korea, honored with the graves of 2,267 fighting men from 16 nations that assisted South Korea. Vietnam cost 3 Owego Free Academy classmates their lives in separate missions. Their last name begin with the 18th letter of the alphabet. Army Specialist Donald Rummel was killed at Tay Ninh on August the 20th, 1968. His unit was surrounded on a mountain. Rummel went to rescue a friend who was shot. Rummel took a bullet to the back of the head. A headstone with 3 crosses marks his grave in Tioga Cemetery. He is buried next to his Gold Star mother, Mrs. Edith Rummel, who died in 1981. His mom loved the song, The Old Rugged Cross, and the 3 crosses are for the 3 OFA classmates. On August the 22nd, 1968, Army Specialist Anthony Rebeck was killed, also at the age of 21, also on the same mountain near Tain. He's buried at St. Patrick's. Rebeck was an OFA wrestler, track and field star. We met Rebeck's parents, Iris and Walter Rebeck of Appalachian, in St. Patrick's Cemetery back in 2001. We asked if they had visited Rummel's grave in nearby Tioga Cemetery. They said they hadn't. We went to the Rummel's grave, and his sister, Nancy Snyder, and other Rummel family members were decorating his grave. The Rummels and the Rebecks embraced on the 30th anniversary at that time. 6 months later, on February 23rd, 1969, Specialist Dwayne Romeo was killed in action at Bin Din. He's buried in Appalachian. One of the last to die in Vietnam was United States Army advisor to the South Vietnamese Marines, 23-year-old Army Captain Harold John Faldemeyer. He was killed on Ascension Thursday, May the 11th, 1972, south of the besieged city of An Loc, South Vietnam. He had visited his grandfather, Ed Fall, in Owego earlier and returned to Vietnam for a 3rd tour of duty. West Point officers had the very painful task of telling his mother, Mary, of her son's death on Mother's Day. Captain Faldemeyer's sister, Joan Faldemeyer, went to St. Thomas Aquinas College near Nyack, New York, with Owego's Candy Gilligan, widow of Vietnam veteran John Gilligan, Jr. If you forget these things, their sacrifice was pointless. Now I'd like to take a moment to ask Barb, while I organize myself, for some thoughts about the procession that took place out here a few minutes ago, of what that means to you.
It proves to me Owego comes through. Owego does not forget. Like I said, it was something that kind of came up at the last minute, but yet the fire department looks to be in it all the way. They haven't forgotten what today means, and I am never, Owego never ceases to amaze me, ever. I am indebted to them.
A point that I got to make here is that in the reading of the roll call, some people may not have heard the names of their deceased veteran. There's a reason for that. The list that was read is a list that was compiled by Vietnam combat veteran Chet Harding and his wife Anita 12 years ago, and it needs to be updated. So right now we're looking for someone who has an interest in computers, in history, in veterans, to take that list, update it with 12 years of names. Now, where are you going to get the names from? Well, the names are going to be provided by the Tioga County Veterans Office, which compiles a list of deceased veterans for every Memorial Day and Veterans Day. And then the list has to be updated, put on the Facebook or another medium, and then accessed, and then continually updated. So it's a labor of love that somebody who may be a little bit younger that can do it for X number of years, or at least pass it off to someone else. So in other words, we need a volunteer or volunteers for the roll call. One of the things we did too was we have a list of names. We asked a life scout Ryan Trenchard to take that list and go out to the Tioga County cemeteries and identify by GPS where a fallen hero is buried. He did that. I've got those names coming up. But before, I'd like to go overseas for the killed in actions who are buried overseas. Robert Baker in Luxembourg Cemetery. Robert Zimmer in Memorial, Belgium. Rockwell Beatty in Cambridge American Cemetery, along with Peter Jenks. In the Pinal American Cemetery, Thomas Smith. In the Florence American Cemetery, Willard Dinany. Also, James Ledoux, Adam Schwindel, Albert Miner. In Lorraine American Cemetery, Raymond Oakes. In Luxembourg, William Harding and Richard Warner. In Manila American Cemetery, Charles Lawson, Leonard Madaw, who was a survivor of the Bataan Death March. In Manila American Cemetery also is Ernest Eckhorst. Buried in the American Cemetery in France is Bud Summers, along with Harry Wright. In the Netherlands American Cemetery, Walter McGee, William Osborne, John Slater, Glenn Warner, Edward Whalen, David Dalton, George Lynch, Warren Schmidt. Robert Lunn is buried in the Normandy American Cemetery. Archie Short is buried in Lorraine, France. Also, from the Tioga County area, from World War I, James Madden, Richard Landon. From World War II, Paul Phillips. Also in Sicily, Rome, from World War II, Clifford Royce and John Haggerty. From Cambridge Military Cemetery, Clyde Armstrong. In Luxembourg, Germany, Hugh Gardner. In France, Harry Benjamin. In the National Memorial Cemetery of the Pacific, Robert Jeanette and Adolf Nagel. The Tioga County Killed in Action location community are as follows. From Appalachian, Raymond Uriah Short and Duane Romeo. From Barton, Richard Millage. From Brookshire, Melton Rundle. From Candor, Nathan Fairley, Richard Hoyt, Marion Lovejoy, Richard Hoyt, Harold Stevens, Earl Diller. Flemingville, Albert Hyde, Marion Lisk, and Harry Marshall. Nichols, James Rogers, Harry Warner, Edward Weaver, Robert Burke, John Wright, and John Lisenby. From Newark Valley, Harold Briggs, James Zimmer, Norman Briggs, Leon Williams, Hiram Saddlemeyer, Nicholas Wilson, John Wurtenberg, and Lester Decker. From Owego, James Alexander, Charles McHenry, Ralph Flynn, Gary Fawcett, Mario Panetti, Perry Bogart, Ralph Catlin, John Rybold, Donald Brummel, Charles Bilbrey Jr., Austin Leahy, Francis McTammany, Edmund Rundle, John Stiles, Anthony Rebeck, Wayne Carlson, Roland Dietrich, Robert Relier, Donald Short, Merle Watkins from Richford. In Smithboro Cemetery, George Mallory, Merritt Murray. From Spencer, Arden Kelsey, Edward Thornton, George Wiggins, Tioga Center. Waverly has Frederick Porter, Franklin Holdridge, Durwood Mills, Edwin Fisk, Richard Edsel, Elmer Taylor, Walter Vanderpool, Earl Winslow, Michael Chamberlain, James Knowlton, Ellsworth Whitley, John Gleason, John Maslin, Paul Butowski, Bertie Shattuck, and Donald Penny from Wiltseyville. Killed in action buried outside Tioga County include Robert Avery in Vestal Hills Memorial, Anthony Batista in Arlington, Angelo Belvey in Bath, Peter Bish in Dumont, Pennsylvania, Edward Boardman in Arlington, Virginia, Miles Brown in Woodlawn, David Card in Little Meadows, Harold Carrington and Dwayne Carter in Riverhurst, Endicott, Glenn Chrysler, Riverside. Also in Pleasant Valley, Henry Clark. Woodlawn, Elmira has James Cooper and James Crockett, as well as Harold Dolan. In Hicks Cemetery, Van Etten, Maurice Fitzmoss Reese and Harold Forshee. Tioga Point Cemetery, Athens, Robert Garrison. In Grove Cemetery, Trumansburg, Edwin Gould. Tioga Point, Paul Latimer. Richard Lucas in St. Mary's, Queens. Harry Marcy in Tioga Point, along with James Moore. In Cobleskill, James Moore. In Tioga Point, Harry Munn. Kenneth Nelson is in Riverside, Endicott. John Peppert, Chemung Village Cemetery in Chemung. In Woodlawn National Cemetery, Ralph Platt. Arlington, Justin Rogers. Woodlawn National Cemetery, Elmira, William Smith. Vestal Hills, Donald Spicer. Riverside Cemetery, Oswego, Robert Turner and William Weeks in Plain Lawn Cemetery. And there's a number of veterans whose information is lacking at this time as to the whereabouts of what cemetery they're in, and they include Roland Marine, Albert Crandall, Lloyd Quick, William Ballard, Albert Church, Howard Jordan, Spencer Kellum, Robert Lawrence, Gerald Maloney, Laverne Millar, Thomas Millard, Gerald Mosier, Richard Romine, John Sidatola, Carl Smith, Gregory Steiger, Keith Tucker, Frederick Vandymark, John Lyman. I can tell you about that one off the top of my head. He was in an aircraft over Denmark in World War II. The plane was shot down, and he parachuted out. He washed ashore. He was found by the citizens. He was obviously deceased. They took him to a temporary burial ground, and the community was afraid that the Germans would find out about it and get him in trouble. So they made some arrangements with the German army, who came about 4 o'clock in the morning and took the body and buried it in the cemetery there, right there by the churchyard. It's a very interesting story. Donald Warner, Edward Whipple, Frank Zolkowski, Russell Cohen, Harold Kramer, Chauncey Moreland, Stuart Cook, Lawrence Kenyon, William Eckert, George Smith, and Oliver Williams. I think you could see that we're struggling with some of the names, some of the locations, and the effort that it takes to get accuracy and double check and triple check. And what I mean by that is that when you go to the computer and you go to look up the casualties of whatever war it is, you have to have the precise spelling of the individual's name. And if you don't have it, you don't get a hit. And also you learn that when you're looking for people from Tioga County, you have to also ask for Oswego, because you'll find your people in the Oswego category. So, lo and behold, all in all, I'm just saying that it's going to take somebody or a team of somebodies to get this information and get it accurate and get it up to date. So, at military funerals, a grateful nation pays its highest respects at the grave of a veteran when the American flag is removed from the casket, folded, and reverently presented to a widow or a mother or a father or a son or a daughter with these words: on behalf of the President of the United States and a grateful nation, please accept this flag as a token of the honorable and faithful service of your loved one. A firing squad fires 3 volleys, and then a bugler plays taps, the most haunting of bugle calls. Well, this morning, right after the procession, John Raftis went to the center of the Susquehanna River Bridge and reverently tossed into the Susquehanna a memorial wreath honoring the Navy dead and those lost at sea, as well as Delmer Sibley, World War II's first casualty, still aboard the USS Arizona at Pearl Harbor, and Steve Palinowski played the trumpet. He was asked last night if he could do taps, and he responded yes. So we thank them. So this all came together in just about, Friday morning. A call was made that said, we'd like to have a procession. And you know that the Owego Hose Company, they lay hose. That's what their news release said. But how they got together and did what they did is just phenomenal. So we remember those whose lives have touched ours. The new father who left his wife and child because he felt a strong pull of duty. The farmer's son who learned to drive a tank instead of a tractor. The combat medic, nurse, or doctor who treated the wounded. The young football star that knew little about war but served on a submarine in the Pacific. And our neighbor on the flats, Army Chaplain Major Eddie Joe Waters. He's pictured in Tom Brokaw's book, The Greatest Generation, aboard ship and landing with our troops in Normandy some 70-plus years ago. Chaplain Waters stayed with the troops until VE Day, and I'll never forget, he sent me a graduation when I graduated from St. Patrick's School many moons ago. Day is done, gone the sun, from the lakes, from the hills, from the sky, all is well, safely rest, God is nigh. These men and women, and those who preceded them, and those we may have missed, left their homes, their jobs, and their families to answer the call of their country. None of them wanted to go to war. They fought gallantly in the hopes that we could one day live in a world without war. We do want to thank the 8th grade team at Owego Appalachian Middle School and the teacher, Mike Bartlow, because they did a book in harm's way where they went out and interviewed about 50 veterans. It's a beautiful, beautiful book of stories of veterans. Now our community will be paying tribute to the United States Navy personnel. Let us remember those buried at sea. And I think we have the Navy song by the Owego Free Academy Marching Band. The sun never sets on the graves of American servicemen, nor on the people who regularly visit them. They have fought a good fight. They have finished the course. They have kept the faith. All who shall hereafter live in freedom will here be remembered. That from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion, that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain. Abraham Lincoln, the Gettysburg Address, 1863. These words embody the true meaning of Memorial Day to honor those who made the ultimate sacrifice in defense of freedom. On this Memorial Day 2020, we remembered those who served, those who made the supreme sacrifice, those who came home and faithfully served their family and community, those who by ancestry, like Kyoto Ichikawa, were detained during the duration of the war, in her case, a Japanese-American internment camp for 3 years. Those in any way who helped to honor the 46 veterans on the new grateful Tioga County Remembrers Memorial in Courthouse Square, and all our veterans who served and made the supreme sacrifice. In remembrance, Memorial Day 2020, I'm Jim Raftis.
Today's broadcast on your hometown station, WEBO, has been presented by the Addiction Center of Broom County, serving Broome, Tioga, and Tompkins. Also sponsored by Confection Connection, the Town of Owego, Village of Owego, Tioga County Chamber of Commerce, Beck's Towing, Calvary St. Patrick's Cemetery, St. Mary's Cemetery of Portland, Realty Solutions, Tireland USA, Agway of Owego and Endicott, Spirits of Appalachian Pharmacy, the Owego Pharmacy, Up the Creek Ladies Consignment, Scott Smith & Son, Driven Automotive, Nick's Garage, S.T. Monroe and Fahey, Dynamic Cleaning, Senator Fred Akshar, Jeff Kai's Auto Sales, Tioga State Bank, Carol's Coffee and Art Bar, Mario's Pizza, and produced by the Radigan Broadcasting Group. Thank you for tuning in to our 2020 Memorial Day ceremony from Owego and Tioga County.
More music, more variety. WEBO, Elmira, Binghamton.
out. Today's high 79. Your AccuWeather forecast is coming up. I'm Michael Baldwin. Here's the latest from myhometowntoday.com. Tomorrow and Wednesday, members of the Maine Endwell class of 2020 are invited to a camp and gown pickup party.